Hello, I'm Marc, I'm the host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and this is a special series during this COVID crisis where we'll be sharing the learnings, best practices, and failures and successes of all the channel leaders throughout the tech industry. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Do you think, Iain, this will change the way you do business in terms of, like, you were coming up to London and you were, engaging with a lot of end users and clients and partners, etc. And you did a lot of face-to-face work and flying around Germany, etc. Do you think this is now going to adjust your travel time? Because we had the technology, but we weren't using it. I wasn't doing video conferencing, and yet we were interviewing candidates over this platform, but we were never interviewing clients like we were speaking to you now.
Yeah, I think that obviously the technology's always been there. It's been there for a long time anyway, since as long as I've known you guys with Skype and Teams. And, ASM works a lot with the enterprise clients. So most of our resellers and SIs, there is a lot of calls, a lot of remote working. So we're quite used to jumping on a call, jumping on a video conference. I've done pitches and large tenders over video conference before now, because you've got decision makers from France, from Germany, from the UK all involved, and it is quicker and easier. However, for me personally, I like the human interaction, and I think sometimes though parts of those conversations that you don't get on a call, because a call is normally quite structured. You jump on a call to talk about a particular topic, whereas in the digital world, it's not the same as having a conversation at the water cooler and something comes out of that. And some of the best opportunities I've worked on in my career have come out of a conversation. And I remember one opportunity specifically, and we were in a meeting, and this chap got up to go and shake my hand, and he said, "Oh, I won't be speaking to you again because I'm moving on to deal with another project." And I was like, "Oh, what's the project?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going to be looking after this business unit and I'm going to be doing this." And out of that, we got a large project which lasted for about 5 years.
Wow.
And that project was worth probably about 3 million a year. So I don't think that conversation would have happened if it wasn't for just that human interaction outside of a call. So I think a mixture of the two, and yes, I think we will reduce our travel, not significantly, but I think it will reduce our travel. I think we're looking at that anyway, because obviously the environmental impact, which is a consideration. But I get loads of grief off our MD for our expensive bill at the best of times.
Graham's going to be happy with his T&E bill at the moment, surely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think we're all conscious about the travel, and I think when we do travel now, we try and plan it better so that we are more we're in the city, we're in there for 2 days, we get everything as much as we've done, we get out, and then we can do the rest on calls and remotely. So yeah, it will change things, but hopefully not too much.
Yeah, and Aaron, I don't know what you're finding at the moment, but I was going to say to Iain, I'm finding from other distributors, Iain, that the supply chains were quite challenging, but they seem to be easing at the moment. Are you finding that at the moment?
Well, yeah. I think our biggest challenge with the supply chain is obviously we work with a lot of software vendors. A lot of them tend to be the up and coming, as I call them, incubator vendors that we work with. A lot of them out in the States. So the biggest impact that we had in March was the dollar rate was causing havoc. We were at one point, we were creeping back up to 131. And I think we slid down to about 114 in 2 or 3 days. And when you've got quotes valid for 14 days out there with customers, we were honouring those, and we did honour a lot of those. And we thought that was the right thing to do, but we were taking a hit on some products. Thankfully, I think the relationships that we have with our customers was quite keen, and we do try and stand by them. So they've stood by us over the last few weeks, and as I think a number of people have shared, that the supply chain is volatile. There is more empathy out there towards that volatility. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a nice space to work in at the moment. There's a lot more understanding, but there is some seriously large projects that are going off with some of our SI and reseller clients to support the likes of NHS and other government areas. And we need to perform. And if anything, I've been really proud of the team of how we've all come together and performed really, really well to support those guys.
Good. Aaron, are you seeing anything, to be able to share with Iain about, what you're seeing from distribution as well?
Yeah, so I think from the conversations that I've had, I think certainly from a hardware perspective, there's been lots of issues with supply chains, especially when there was a really, really high demand. I think, as Marc mentioned, I'm starting to hear that it's easing off now, and people are starting to get their ducks in a row as people are adjusting to working from home. And I think on the software side, probably a little bit similar to you. I think it depends on who the vendors are. I mean, if it's the larger software vendors, then people seem to be able to distribute those products pretty freely. But again, when you work in, as you've mentioned, the incubation space, they've had similar types of challenges to you, really. But yeah, they're very similar, really, just depending on the product type.
Yeah, it's always quite challenging and difficult, and nobody, no matter how astute they were, could have planned for something of this scale. We've been really lucky over the years that we've had a very, we've kind of, working with the types of clients that we work with, we've had to have business continuity plan in place, and we've had to test it regularly as well. But we could never have tested it to this level. So in terms of supply chain, in terms of getting the team moving, our response was excellent, and thankfully we've invested a lot over the last couple of years in IT infrastructure. We've got our own in-house guys, so we weren't in a ticketing queue waiting to be the next guy. Our guys were straight on it. We've got our own warehouse with the guys building laptops, so those people that didn't have laptops, so outside of the external team and senior management. And literally within 2 days prior to the lockdown being announced, we were ready to go, and we had a couple of niggles, and we were there. And credit to the guys, John and Dave, who led that. Absolutely amazing, and huge respect to the guys for doing that.
That's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, Iain, because we had conversations, over the last 18 months, 2 years, where you've said to me, you're putting massive investment into IT and infrastructure, new systems, and it was costing a significant amount of money, huge investment. But my God, has it paid off now? Because agile IT, we got caught short. There's no doubt about that. We were scraping around for desktops and laptops, and it was an absolute nightmare. But we had a couple of weeks where we just couldn't function almost. But I think
Sorry.
That's all right. I think it's been great that you've been able sort of to do that. Do you think culturally, obviously, ASM, Northern Office, all in one building, etc., great culture, collaboration, etc. And then you've got that London vibe where you've got a great open plan office. Sorry, you've got that office and you've got that great open space area. And we've met loads of times there. Now, obviously, no one can get into their offices. How have you adapted to sort of keep that culture, that ASM culture, when you can't see anyone, or you can see them virtually, but you can't meet anyone?
Yeah, good, very good question. And culture, I think, is really important to ASM, and we've, I think, thrived in this kind of culture for years. So winding back the clock 27 years ago, my background and that of 2 out of 3 of our other directors was born in the maintenance space. So you were having to be agile, you were having to respond quickly, you were having to collaborate as a team, and it wasn't transactional business. Every opportunity that came through was, how do we solve a problem? And I think over the years, that sort of culture of when we get a request through from a customer, it's not, oh, it's another piece of software they're asking for. It's what is the problem and how can we address it? And that culture has really stayed part. And, when lockdown went in, we were closing our year end 31st of March. Obviously, we closed year end during lockdown. The team pulled together. We delivered the figures that we needed to do for the month, for the year, the last few days. The team effort was amazing. It was really, really good. In terms of the different offices, those guys are all pulling their weight from different areas. We're all jumping on projects. We're spinning plates, however you want to describe it. But that is part of our DNA. It's what we do really, really well. And, again, really been proud of the team. And in all areas, be it operational, sales, finance, we had, to give you an idea, our finance team have been in over the weekend, making sure that supplier invoices were loaded on the system so that we didn't get too far behind with payments to our suppliers.
Wow.
You can't buy that. You can't buy that.
And when the chips are down, the team step up, and my guys have been on calls all this weekend, working on a large project for a government body. They've been helping out with that. Our buying team have been involved with it, and I was dipping in and dip out of calls. It's great to see, and I really like these times, even though it's not great from a personal aspect, and obviously the people that are suffering out there. In terms of a business, and getting teams pulling together is fantastic.
Now, Iain, I know you pretty well. I've obviously known you for 10, 12 years now, whatever it's been. And I know one aspect of what you're very key at is investing in those relationships, those client relationships. They're not just transactional; it's real partnerships. And I know that for a fact because you've reiterated to me for years about that with the relationships you've got, which are key. Has your communication style with your team changed into making sure those relationships are key now? Because I know that you are very much an advocate of drinks and meetings and that touch, that meeting, etc. Because obviously it's gone out the window now. So how are you maintaining that investment in your relationships, your key relationships with your customers?
So there's two answers to that question. Even though as you'll know, we've actually recruited, and we'd got a new member of the external team starting on the 6th of April, and we agreed that he would continue to start with us and become part of that team. We are, I think the phrase that one of my team came up with, we're moving from physical to digital. So a lot of the work that we're doing is now done digitally. Obviously, we've invested in Microsoft Teams, and we're all frequent Teams and Skype users, whichever is the preference across the business. However, coming back down to the basics about having a drink, some of my team have been on customer quiz nights on virtual. They've been on customer virtual beer sessions. They've been engaging just as they would, instead of it just been on site. Those calls have been coming in. The activity hasn't changed; it's just different, and it's still as fast and as furious as ever. But and the same with our team. We're still doing our Monday morning sales meeting. We get everybody on. We've been doing virtual beers. We created the ASM virtual pub. I'm the virtual pub landlord. We've had quiz sessions. We're going to do probably at the end of the month. We're going to do a Mario Kart tournament of virtual online.
Brilliant.
It's keeping that interaction there. But we work, and I've mentioned this to Aaron a lot of times. The team work very much as a team. My management style in particular is more heads are better than one. We all bounce off each other.
Yeah.
I like input from people. I don't like to hire yes people. I like people who will push back on me and go, no, Iain, that's not the greatest idea. And let's try this. So I do think that element is still there. I've had a number of calls from my team saying, what are your thoughts on this? How can you help with this? Or, what I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? And that's still part. And I'm used to managing a remote team anyway. So yeah.
I think what I don't know about. I'm going to ask Aaron in a minute, but I don't know about you, Aaron. But I haven't heard many people do what you said about, yes, everyone's been doing virtual beers and virtual quizzes and all that sort of stuff, but internally, I haven't heard many people joining their customers one. So actually, I'm going to take that tip from you myself, and I'm going to join someone's virtual beers this Friday. I don't know, maybe it might be.
If we do, you can join us, Marc.
Yeah, I think that's great because you can so much get internally thinking, oh, we've got to make. Of course, it's important of the well-being of our own staff and making sure they're all engaged. But actually, joining the virtual beers and some of the events of your customers, I haven't heard many people do that. I don't know about you, Aaron. Have you heard?
None. No one. I haven't heard anyone. I've had lots of conversations as well, and I don't think I've heard anyone suggest, do you know what, why don't my team go and jump on beers with their customers? I haven't heard it before, but yeah, hats off. I think I'll do the same.
Yeah, it's and I think it's those, again, it comes down to relationships, and I'm probably old school sales, and I do believe in investing in people, and everything that we've always done is for the long-term relationship, which is why, going back to what I said before, we've taken losses on orders because of the dollar, but we know at the end of the day that the customers will stick by us, and we get that back by their long-term investment. So it's about playing fair at the end of the day.
Yeah,
great.
And I think I echo that thought actually, Ian, because there'll be a lot of customers that are saying channel firms that are saying, oh, we're fantastic employers and all this sort of stuff, and they're customer centric. But my God, you're going to find out who's customer centric now, and you're going to find out who's a good employer, because at the moment there seems to be a lot of companies in crisis mode, which understandably I know that. But also as well, if you are customer centric or people centric to your own firm, you will put the people first, and you will put your customers first, and you'll be sticking close to them. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out over the coming weeks, because I know that's very much a trait, especially for yourself and ASM, that you've been very stick to you very value your customers and your relationships. I can tell that by the way you operate, so I don't even have to ask you that, etc. In terms of a well-being of your own staff, have you had sort of checkpoints of that? Because there's isolation, there's people that aren't used to working at home, and cats, dogs, grands, kids, whatever, goldfish in the building trying to stop them.
Absolutely.
Have you had a sort of checkpoint on sort of a well-being issues?
Yeah, and I think we're a very close working team, and I'm really lucky that the management team that we got in place. So when the COVID situation started to break out, we met daily as a management team and as a board to see how we could best address the issue. We decided that we would take our own opinions of how this was going to pan out of the equation, and we'd listen to the advice from the scientists and the technical guys. But there is also that emotional and those relationships with your team as well. And again, we're not only about building relationships with our customers, but it's having those relationships in place with your team to say, "Are you all right?" We've got people who are working at home with small children. We've got people who live on their own, who are sat at home in their house 8-10 hours a day on their own. It's tough. So they're the people that when you jump on a call, you give them some attention and you look after them and you ask, "Are you okay?" And but also you have a bit of a laugh with them, and we've very much got that let's get the job done, but let's have a bit of a laugh culture as well. And even if it's laughing at one of my colleagues trying to find the right button to unmute herself or on Skype, and we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we don't have a lot of egos around the business, so it is a team effort, and we all engage. And my sales manager, she's fantastic. She's got 30 years of experience under her belt. Another fantastic hire we got through you guys. I'll give you a bit of a plug there. She's got experience of managing people, and having those skills in the business and good skills is really important when it comes to people's well-being.
100%.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review? and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.